The 1990s and early 2000s saw a wave of globally successful Japanese horror films, a movement that has come to be known as J-horror. These J-horror films carry on a long-standing tradition of socially conscious ghost stories in Japan. The most influential of these films are Hideo Nakata's 1998 film Ring and Takashi Shimizu's 2002 film The Grudge. My research identifies how and why the child ghost is a central theme of these millennial J-horror films. I've found that the ghostly child of millennial J-horror embodies cultural anxieties associated with the period from the 90s to the early 2000s, now known as the Lost Decades. During this period, Japan's miraculously rapid post-war economic growth suddenly slumped dramatically. The economic recession and subsequent stagnation resulted in wholesale changes to the structure of employment in Japan, with the increase of insecure short-term contracts. These changes had implications for the dissolution of the nuclear family, such as a precipitous decline in birth rates. The reconfiguration of employment had such far-reaching consequences that Anne Allison has characterized it in terms of the liquidization of work and family structures. We can see the anxieties around this liquidization in a film like Grudge director Shimizu's Dark Water from 2002. This film features the ghost of a little girl who died in a water tank after both her parents, who are separated, forget to collect her from school. The ghost is a liquefied mass of dripping mud, her sogginess an embodiment of the melting of family unity in the early 2000s. In Dark Water, as in many J-horror films, the child ghost is the locus for deeply rooted cultural tensions. The child performs a particularly important social function in Japan because ideologies of childhood are very tangled up with notions of national progress. The child's growth and progression into a productive adult citizen personifies national progress in quite rigid ways in Japan. This relates to the way that Japan's highly pressurized school system ties into future employment prospects. During the Lost Decades, it became commonplace to question the human costs of Japan's rapid post-war economic progress, with a special focus on the pressure placed on children to succeed in school and to progress smoothly into gainful employment that served the national interest. Along with this new interrogation of the school system came moral panics about children going off the rails. News media frequently reported on children misbehaving in school, or even worse, turning into murderers and criminals. Some of Japan's most brutal, high-profile murders were committed by children in the late 90s and early 2000s. This led Prime Minister Ryotaro Hashimoto to lament on national television, "Where did we go wrong?" Concerns over children's failure to grow up into productive adults were manifested in a popular phrase, "The child is turning strange," or kodamagahenda. In J-horror films, the child turns strange in a multitude of unsettling ways. For the ultimate embodiment of the child is turning strange, look no further than another film directed by Takashi Shimizu, Reincarnation from 2005. It features a climactic scene in which the ghost of a little girl merges with her beloved doll. This conjoining of material object and apparition gives us one of the spookiest murderous doll scenes ever committed to film. Underlying the monstrous mutation of the child in millennial J-horror is this delayed recognition of children's long-standing victimization. These characters enact violent revenge upon a society that has oppressed them in service of national progress. It's telling that in many J-horror films, including Ring, The Grudge, and Takashi Miike's 2003 film One Missed Call, child ghosts enact their curses through technology, from videotapes to surveillance cameras and mobile phones. Technology, like the child, is a key signifier of national and economic progress in Japan, given that Japan's surprising post-war success was largely driven by technological development. Children often use technology in J-horror as vessels for their supernatural curses, curses which force their victims to experience and relive their own past traumas. The only way characters can save themselves from these unstoppable vengeful spectres is through a process of eternal deferment, such as copying and passing on the cursed videotape that Sadako creates in Ring. This form of vengeful ghost rages against not just the person who murdered them, as is typical of the vengeful ghosts of traditional Japanese ghost stories, but against society in general. Although the child ghosts of millennial J-horror are monstrous, by turning their victimization at the hands of their adult guardians into their supernatural power, they also productively rebel against these constrictive cultural ideals of childhood. By refusing to grow up in a way that aligns with national progress, these child ghosts illuminate how Japan's lost decades represented an opportunity to reimagine the child's position in the country's national narrative.